Hey students, so it is Thursday. Now, you should have already done this page and worked all the way up to where it says John Locke. Now you could complete everything that's here in John Locke all the way up to right here. We're going to be discussing this today. But this part right here of John Locke of political societies. Now political societies basically means civil governments. Political societies. Societies is people living together. So that's on this page right after the centrifugal and centripetal powers is this page right here. And then there's a little bit on the back, so you read down to right here, okay? So that's for that section of John Locke. Today, we're going to be studying this next part, starting on question number, so that John Locke, from question 14 through 18, you answer that out of your own reading. Now we're going to start talking with number 19. So you can turn your papers, if you want to highlight stuff, to why the Founding Fathers chose a republic. So that's page 206, right here. This is where you read to John Locke, so it's at the very, very bottom. Because one of the last things that we saw in your answers is what you should have figured out. The last question was, the external civil government is a reflection of what aspect of a nation? So number 13. Hopefully you all got that. It is a reflection of the people. The way the government is the way the people are. So the federal government and the civil government and the leaders are a reflection of the people. So let's begin reading on here. So why the Founding Fathers chose a republic. The men who established this republic thought continually of posterity. What is posterity? Posterity means children. Thought of their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. Essentially, it's their descendants. So, number 19 would be descendants. And I'm not going to go over what 20 is, 21, 22, all the way to number 23. You'll just have to figure that out as you read it and as I do this short teaching, okay? The constant aim, as one of them wrote, was to lay a foundation for ages to understand their liberty as men and Christians. For this purpose, said William Penn, we put the power in the people. So we have to remember that a republic is power in the people, okay? To put power in the people implies faith. It implies that the component individuals are, for the most part, already endowed with self-government. So in order to have power in the people have to have what? Self-government. Because if you cannot control yourself internally, as we discussed earlier this week, you'll have to be governed externally. So if you want to have a republic where the laws are based on the people that you choose, the people themselves have to be self-governed. This republic, turn the page, is grounded in the belief that the individual can govern himself. On the validity of that belief, it will stand or fall. So a republic will work if the people can govern themselves. It will fail if the people cease to govern themselves. Our title implies we seek to examine this dual power, or as our title implies, that which the people possess as individuals and that which has been entrusted to them as citizens of the republic. Some national governments, like that of Russia, have either inherited or acquired unlimited power over their subjects. Other governments, like that of the Great Britain, have developed as to respond to the will of a parliamentary majority, no matter where they may lead. The American system does not fall into either of those classifications. It is designed to prevent usurpation of absolute power by any individual, meaning the American system was designed so no one could usurp, which means use their power in the wrong way, take power that did not belong to them. That is how it was designed to work. By any individual, any group, or by the spokesman of a people to whom, as a whole, so much was given. The United States, correctly designated, is neither a dictatorship nor a complete political democracy, but a federal republic. So when you hear people saying, oh, our democracy is in jeopardy, and we need to preserve our democracy, and our democracy was founded, that is not true. America was never founded as a democracy. It was founded as a federal republic, okay? In fact, America is a Christian constitutional federal republic. Number 22. America is a Christian constitutional federal republic. That's the official designation of what kind of government America is. The word republic, however, is one of many political terms that we must learn to use more precisely. if there's to be any meeting of minds on the ideas that such words were designed to convey. Long before the autocrats of the present Russian regime, described as a Soviet Union, as a federation of republics, Madison had commented on the extreme inaccuracy with which the term has been used in political disquisitions. Meaning, some people might say it's a republic, but it's not really a republic. Because a republic, remember, is set with the people in mind, that the power comes from the people. That the people must govern themselves or they will be externally controlled. If people cannot govern themselves, then they cannot sustain a republic. Eventually, the republic will crumble. It'll either turn into a monarchy or tyranny, or it'll turn into an outright democracy. Okay? And we'll discuss later on, especially when you get into government class, exactly what a democracy is. Even next year in universal history, we'll study more about democracy. We'll probably get into it more this year as well. But a democracy is 51% majority. So if 51% of the people say, hey, we want slavery, guess what? Slavery comes back. If 51% of the people decide, hey, we want to kill all the people who wear glasses, we kill all the people who wear glasses. That's how democracy works, okay? And we'll learn later on that a republic is designed to protect us from that type of tyranny of majority rule, or the tyranny of the majority. So we're going to learn a little bit about that later on as well, okay? So we need to make sure that when we use the word republic, that we use it the correct way. So in this issue of the Federalist, the master builder of the Constitution reasoned that a republic has. So here's James Madison, okay, who said this is what a republic is, or this is what a republic has. A government which derives all of its power directly or indirectly from the great body of the people. So where does all the power come from? From the people. And is administered by persons holding their offices during pleasure for a limited period or during good behavior. So the laws are passed by people who are what? Holding an office means they were elected, and notice it says during pleasure means while they were happy with them. November's coming up. The country's going to decide whether it wants to keep President Trump as president or if they want someone else as president, right? He serves really at the pleasure of the people. If the people don't want him and he doesn't get as many votes as he wants in the Electoral College, he loses out. Okay, because remember, a president is elected by the states. Okay, there's a certain amount of people in each state, but each state has a certain amount of electoral votes, and that helps to keep out fraud. That makes sure things are just between larger states like California and smaller states like Rhode Island. Now, there's a lot of discussion and debate about that, and we'll get it when we get into government class. We'll discuss the Electoral College even more. But the Electoral College does protect the elections, and it gives everybody basically an equal voice in how the leaders are elected. But remember, a president is chosen by the states. People in the states vote, but the states choose the president depending on who voted the majority in that state, okay? So for example, in California and the other election, the majority of California voted for Hillary Clinton. So Hillary Clinton got the 55 electoral votes for California. But then in Texas, the majority of Texas voted for Donald Trump. So he got, I think it was 45 or 50, I can't remember how many electoral votes Texas has. So Texas put its votes towards Donald Trump. And so whoever has the most electoral votes at the end of the night, whoever has, I think it's 270 or more, ends up winning the nomination to be president, and then the Senate just confirms that he is indeed the president. But this is what he's saying, that they hold it during pleasure means as long as people are happy for them. If people are not happy with someone, guess what? They're not going to vote for him again. Notice it continues for a limited period of time. So even if Trump wins this time in November, guess what? He cannot run again. He can only run twice. Okay? And during good behavior. So there had been people who've done wrong things and they've been kicked out of office, either in Congress or as president or as governors or as legislators in the states. If they don't have good behavior, they can be removed for office. They don't get to just stay in there no matter what they do. Does that make sense? It is essential to such a government that it be derived from the great body of society, not from an inconsiderable portion or a favored class of it. So he's saying it needs to be selected from everybody, not just a certain percentage, not just 51%, not just the majority of a certain kind of people. It needs to represent all the people, okay? And when we talk about the majority rule and the protections we have from majority rule, that'll help you understand that. It is sufficient for such a government that the persons administering it be appointed either directly or indirectly by the people, and that they hold their appointments by either the tenure or of the tenures just specified. So basically that they can hold office if they're doing what? For a limited period of time, and if they had good behavior. If not, people shouldn't vote for them again. We should not vote for a thief. We should not vote for someone who does not know how to manage things. We talked about earlier this week about if someone can't manage their family, then how in the world can they manage a city or a state or a nation, for example? So we need to take those things into account. Let's keep going. A republic, therefore, must have a truly representative government. On the other hand, this new government must be strong enough to preserve the rights of the minority. Because, you know, in the United States, there's majorities and there's minorities, right? And not talking about minorities as in just skin color, we're talking as minorities as in beliefs as well. Okay? You know, you have the Amish people. And the Amish have a certain way that they practice their religion. They don't want electricity. They are exempt from a lot of things. And in our Constitution, in our country, even though they're a small percentage, their rights and their religious beliefs are still protected. Does that make sense? So because they're a minority, because they're Amish. So you could be a minority in certain things you believe. You could be a minority in your skin color. You could be a minority in a bunch of other ways. So when we're talking about minorities and majorities, we're not talking just about skin color, just so you understand that, okay? But it's going to preserve the rights of the minority and continuously jeopardize in all cases where a majority are united by a common interest or passion. So just because, like let's just say most of the people in the United States say, we don't want the Amish to practice their religion anymore. Well, just because most of the people in the country don't want them to practice their religion doesn't mean that they can't practice their religion. That they can be Amish and live on the farms without electricity and homeschool their own kids and all the things the Amish do. And if you want to know who the Amish are, YouTube them and Google them. There's some interesting videos about the Amish and what they do. All right? Like they don't even have, a lot of them don't even have electricity still. They still use candles and lanterns, and they don't use any electric appliances. They don't have electricity in their homes. They do everything the old-fashioned way, right? Because that's part of their belief and the way they practice. And they have their own church and they do their own teachings and stuff like that, right? But just if the majority of the country did not want them to exist, they can't just stop them from practicing their religion because they're protected under our Constitution with religious freedom. So that's just one example of how a minority is protected from a perhaps majority who might not like them. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, where were we? Madison chose his words with an accuracy and a delicacy in which modern political discussion is shockingly deficient, meaning people don't talk like he talks. People today don't talk like he used to talk. An elastic federal republic, democratic in form. Now, when we say democratic in form, that means that people have a voice. Okay, it doesn't mean a democracy. When you say democratic, it means that people have a voice. Okay, in a monarchy, people don't really have a voice, do they? Because, you know, if I'm the king, then Joshua's the king, and then his son would be king, unless he got killed, right? Like Louis got his head cut off by the French during the French Revolution. I think it was Louis XIV, right? That's when the people rose up. Because when people are under too much tyranny, eventually they're going to rebel and they're going to kill the people they feel are their oppressors. All right? An elastic federal republic, democratic in form, but carefully safeguarded against the inconveniencies of democracy, which was what he sought and what actually was established for the United States. So he wanted to make sure that people had a voice, but that it did not develop or turn into a democracy where the 51% of the people controlled everybody, right? Because there might be things that you want, and 51% of the people might not want those. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't get to do those things that you want to do or exercise those liberties that you should have and those rights that you should have just because 51% of the people don't like it. Of course, as long as it's not, you know, you can't say, well, I feel like I should have the right to go out and kill as many people as I want to. Okay, within reason. Does that make sense? For example, let's go back to the example of the Amish. Underlying the whole plan in Madison's memorable words is that honorable determination to rest all our political experiments on the capacity of mankind for what? Self-government. Highlight that in your notes. America was an experiment. They said it's never been done in the history of the world that people elected their own leaders, promised to obey the laws, and it succeeded. I mean, it's the first time it had ever happened. He said this, so this is a great experiment, and it's all based on what? The capacity, which means the ability of mankind for self-government. It's the ability of the people to govern themselves. Because remember, if your reason is not submitted to the Lord, and your will and appetite are not the vassals or the slaves of your reason, you cannot be self-governed. If you cannot govern yourself, you can't govern your family. If you can't govern your family, you can't govern your county. This whole idea of the American Republic and the Federal Republic was based on the idea that man was able to govern himself internally without having to have all the external controls. Of recent years, it has been increasingly assumed that Americans are no longer able to govern themselves. If you've been watching the news, you see the riots, you see people fighting, you see Trump supporters fighting with Black Lives Matter supporters, you see Antifa, you see, the white supremacist type people coming out, and you're like, oh my gosh, these people are just not governing themselves. It seems like people are governing themselves less and less, doesn't it? In view of the conditions that have everywhere followed the destruction of self-government, a restoration of this faith would seem not only honorable, but essential for survival, meaning in order for America to continue, to last. If it continues where it's going, it's eventually going to fall into a tyranny, right? Or become a democracy where the minorities are not protected, right? Now, we're not talking minorities again as skin colors, just different beliefs. So the hope is the restoration of self-government. That's why, students, it's so important that you understand this, that you learn this, that you teach your children one day. You go out and teach others about being able to govern themselves, because that's going to protect the liberties that you have today. Because the liberties you have today, if you continue to be unself-governed, we're going to lose them. All right? Turn the page. Let's finish up here real fast. The following point is essential to understand in learning why we are a federal or federated republic, and thus represent each individual at all times, regardless of whether he agrees or disagrees with the action of the majority. So for example, the majority of people in the United States are not Amish, right? They don't believe that way, they don't want to live that way, but the Amish still are able to be protected. There might even be people who don't want the Amish to be protected, but that doesn't matter. They're still protected, even though they're a very small portion, or we could say a minority of the country. His position is not eliminated by the majority overruling him. So even though there's more people who probably don't care about the Amish, they still can't take away his rights and his liberty. In a democracy, as in Athens, mob rule often exercised as much tyranny as did the autocrat kings, right? So democracy can be just as tyrannical and just as captive and creating as much bondage and pain as a monarchy, which is a king, because someone's governing another person through force, right? It's the 51% forcing the 49% to do what they want to do because they want to do it, just like a king forcing everybody to do what he wants to do, even if they don't want to do it. The Christian idea of man, notice again, we have the Christian idea of man and government. It comes out, okay? A democracy is not the Christian idea of man, where a republic has the Christian idea of man in it. The Christian idea of man and government protects and preserves the rights of each individual by the balance of the two commandments: love for God, for principles of right, and love for and respect for one's fellow man. Again, this is an internal aspect of Christian self-government, expressed externally in government, which benefits all, the minority as well as the majority. Because if everybody, we talked about this before, if everybody was perfectly self-governed, we would not need any external governments, would we? We would not need the civil government, because we would treat the minority as well as we treat the majority. We treat those with different beliefs just like we want to be treated even if we have different beliefs, okay? So, later on it goes into restraints on majority role and how those things work. But this is why you need to understand that when you hear someone say that America is a democracy, it is not a democracy. Because a democracy does not value the rights of every single individual. And you might look around and say, well, neither does our republic, because so many minorities are being mistreated, and this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening. Nothing is ever perfect, but we have that idea that we're working out to make it better. And even though some bad things might happen, as a general rule, most viewpoints are equally valuable, okay? And so, but we're going through a shift right now where we're seeing the lack of self-government, and when we see the lack of self-government, it causes what? It causes those minorities, those with different views, different beliefs, to be treated how? Differently by the majority. So the key is to have the Christian idea of man and to govern ourselves. If we govern ourselves and other people govern themselves, then all these external problems, racism, all this kind of stuff, it'll just disappear. It'll take care of itself. Everything begins internally with Christians first governing themselves and extending their influence into every area that they go. So one day you're going to grow up, you're going to be out of school, you're going to have your job, you're going to have your business, you're going to have your family, and it's going to be your choice whether you're going to extend these ideas of self-government from yourself to your family and to those around you. And if you're able to do that effectively, and if many more people do that effectively, and God continues to work in our nation, our republic will be saved. If not, it's going to continue to get worse until we decide that, hey, we better start governing ourselves. Okay, so students, I'm going to go ahead and post another video dealing with the word study. So that's coming up next. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. Bye.